It's really important to understand the development of JavaScript over the years. And this is because the way JavaScript has developed has really impacted the way that we write JavaScript. So having a little bit of understanding of this history is really important as you learn the language. And again, I'm just going to cover just the very basics, but there's a lot to this history, and it's a fascinating history and worth looking into if you're interested in that kind of thing. And you can find out about it by looking it up on the web, or there's plenty of books about it and that kind of stuff. But just to be brief about it, again, we know that JavaScript was originally written in 1995 in 10 days by Brendan Eich and his team at Netscape. And then in 1997, the first version of the standard was released. And the standard is created by the European Computer Manufacturers Association. And essentially, the people in California went to Europe to this association to get this language rubber stamped. It didn't turn out to be quite that easy, but that's a longer story. But in 1997, the first version, ECMAScript 1, was standardized and released. And then a third version, the second version never really quite happened, but the third version came out in 1999 with some minor changes and fixes. The fourth version is an interesting story, and one that I won't go into great depth on. But again, you can look it up for yourself. But essentially, if you'll recall, I had said earlier that there was a lot of arguing about the direction of JavaScript, and there were a lot of developers that didn't really understand it. And there was some push to make JavaScript more like other programming languages that we are already familiar with and comfortable with. And Douglas Crockford really stepped in and said, wait, look, JavaScript is its own language, and it has its own powerful features in its own right. And if you understand it and make use of that power, then it really is valuable to keep it the way it is. And it took a while for him to convince people of that. But in 2009, they released ECMAScript 5, and ECMAScript 4 was scrapped. They started to go a different direction entirely, and then they scrapped that direction entirely. And so they released ECMAScript 5 in 2009. And this is the version that when it was released, everybody had kind of come together around the table and said, JavaScript is going to be the scripting language for the web. And because everybody had agreed with that, this is when JavaScript really took off and made it past its troubled beginnings and its difficult beginnings, was here in 2009. In 2009 is when JavaScript became king of the web, because all of the major players agreed that this is going to be the scripting language, the programming language of the web. And they built in a lot of features. There's a lot that's built into ECMAScript 5 that we'll be using throughout this course. Over the next 10 years, there was a lot of work on JavaScript. And they really wanted to move it from being a scripting language to a general all-purpose language, something that was very powerful. And in 2015, ES6, what is commonly referred to as ES6, was released. Sometimes it's called ECMAScript 2015. Those two terms are interchangeable. But ES6 was released, and it's a big release. A lot changed, and a lot was added, and a lot of JavaScript was made more powerful and turned into a more general all-purpose programming language. And a lot of what you'll be learning in this course are pieces from the 2009 ECMAScript 5 standard and pieces from the ECMAScript 2015 ES6 standard together, which really make up the major part of JavaScript. Since 2015, the standardizing body has been in a nice cadence of releasing new versions each year. And from then on, instead of calling it ES7 and ES8 and that kind of stuff, they stuck with the year. So they came out with ECMAScript 2016, ECMAScript 2017, and so on and so forth. And each year there are smaller new additions added, but on the whole, these additions are fairly small, and there'll be more advanced pieces that we won't see nearly as much of in this course because this is a beginner's course, but we will be doing a lot with ECMAScript 5 and ES6 or ECMAScript 2015. So dive in, and I hope you enjoy learning about JavaScript as we go along here.